Excellent. Okay. Hi. Well, thank you so much. I just want to say that as I listened to the opening and the welcoming speakers, I got more and more enthused about what's happening here today. So, and tomorrow. So, I like probably many folks in the room, if you have personal professional experience with mobbing, that's when you learned the term, and that's when you learned about this phenomenon that is so damaging. So, I don't tweet except on rare occasions in the past with a professional organization that I was volunteering with. But I read a lot of Twitter. And one thing the kids say is and I had to look it up, but IYKYK, right? And it means if you know, you know. And so for those of us who have experience with mobbing, we know what this is. We know internally for ourselves something that once we've started reading the literature, once we've started analyzing our own experiences, once we've started talking with other people, once we've started witnessing it, somehow we know there is something different here than merely kind of the schoolyard bullying or any other term we'd like to use. We know there's something different, and it's such a harmful thing. So that's, there's much more to say, as always, from a personal, professional perspective. But again, we kind of know what this is about, right? And I bring this in here and have it highlighted and scrawled on, just as I used and noted it for myself in a faculty development workshop I did with some folks in Turkey, with the exception that I've added this this little underlining and asterisk, because it has become really present for me in thinking about this truly as a part of academic social ecology. And we'll talk more about that. It's a disciplinary, a really foundational theory in my own field. And so I call out this term of civility now, not to say that we shouldn't be emphasizing civility in our institutions. But if we pause or stop at fostering a culture and environment of civility, sometimes we pause or stop on lengthy documents, or maybe not lengthy documents, shorter documents of here's how we'll treat each other. And those will help, especially when they are enforced, especially when, if such a document exists for your institution, you can request to have that honored, right? That it does help. From my perspective as a socially and structurally focused public health academic, I see there as being so much more. And I love that I heard Dr. Pace saying, bringing in structural components of institutions, right, to the room. And I've been, in the last several years, and I realize that for myself, it's grounded in my very first experiences as a faculty member. My needing to do the deep work of personally analyzing the context I was in. And I think that started very early on, but I didn't have the name for it because it hadn't happened to me yet in a way that was acute and extreme, and that called on me to say what just happened here, and called on me to talk with another person who said, oh, you go out and read this literature, right? Until that happened to me, I didn't realize that a lot of what I was experiencing was mobbing in small and subtle ways, and that a lot of what I was doing in response while I was teaching myself to teach, right? Because I don't know about you, but I was not that rock star who came into my assistant professor role as an easy and natural teacher. And my student evaluations showed it right away. And so I thought, if I'm going to stay here and thrive, I have to teach myself to teach. So as I did that, I realized that I was also spending energy thinking, what is wrong here? And why is this so hard? And what do I do with this? And now that I've learned this at this teaching conference, how do I enact it in my classroom in the context where I'll be challenged for working in this way? And just again, even in my first few years as a public health academic at an institution, recognizing what does and does not work in the environment to support faculty quality of life and thus student quality of life. So another thing that I love that was brought into the room and that I'm so excited to see in the program is that piece on students and how students can certainly and do contribute to a context in which mobbing is more prevalent. And they mob themselves. They mob faculty themselves without realizing it, without knowing it even. That sons of bitches comment comes to me too, that I don't think students recognize what they're doing when they are contributing to mobbing. And so I'm super excited to hear about that context for the presenters who will be talking about this. So, one thing that happened for me as I learned about mobbing was understanding the uniqueness of our settings and understanding that it is more likely to be that we are mobbed in institutions, or at least that it is recognized differently, or needs to start to be recognized maybe differently than in other workplaces. I'll say here too that the term public mobbing is new to me. And I think that those of us who live in this environment, who experience it, who develop our own lived expertise around it, we just won't ever stop learning about this. But it hit me that as I've been mulling things over the last few days, no matter what anyone thinks of President Biden, my perspective is that he was mobbed. And when I heard the term public mobbing, I thought, wow, I wonder if that's what that is about, that he was mobbed in public. And I'll have to learn what that talk of public mobbing is. But so yeah, no matter what you think and no matter what happened yesterday, my perspective as someone who has experienced mobbing is that Joe Biden was mobbed. But getting back to our institutions, our workplace settings are unique, and we have to recognize that. And one way I can recognize it for myself and others in my profession, both academia and public health thinking, is through the lens of social ecology. So the social ecological model, like most of the things that we have in public health to explain ourselves and to do our work, most of it's borrowed. And I've only just begun in the last several years learning how borrowed that is. But this is a foundational and very easy to help students understand and get under their belts kind of model in my field. And it lends itself so well to thinking about mobbing, because you can take literally any issue, smoking, underage drinking, unsafe sex practices, violence, you can take anything and place it in the social ecological model. And so I, started doing that with mobbing. And it has built for me just again a way to look at things and a way to realize I've been looking at things in this way for a very long time. Again, it's a almost self-explanatory model. It's the type of thing that makes people say, "Oh, public health, it's just common sense," right? It's the easiest way to look at anything in the world, right? You place yourself or your experience or your community's experience in the center. And in public health, we're looking at, well, that's biology, my biology, and then, my knowledge and attitudes, my experiences, my genetics, all of that, right? That's the me part. And then you start moving out and consider what imposes on that. And in the social ecology model, in a simplified way, we talk about the interpersonal, right? Relationships, interactions, and that can, in the peer-to-peer, and that can resonate for any community, talking about any issue, right? And then close organizational settings, right? And so for ourselves, in our institutions, that's our programs and our departments, right? And the policies we have and don't have, the interactions that happen there, what is imposed on us in that level from other aspects of the institution, right? And that's how we get to there, right? The larger institution, its policies, its official procedures and processes, right? Those things that determine our working lives all the time, every single day, every single quarter or semester, every single year, every single tenure cycle, right? All of those things determine our lives, our working lives. And as was mentioned as well, we spend a lot of time here, and we bring it home, right? Whether that's bringing work and the piles of paperwork home, and before or as we learn to try to not do that as much, but we still do it, or it's bringing home our experiences and what they are doing to us and how they're devastating us, and how they're devastating others as we witness it. And bringing that home into our relationships and into our household living, right? So those structures just impinge on us and harm us in all kinds of ways. And then leadership and upper administrators, of course, right? They are the ones who enact the policies and procedures and processes. They're the ones who bring new ones in. Even when we talk about faculty senate structures and things coming up through there, leadership are the folks who dash our hopes sometimes, who stop progress on things, who set agendas, all of that. And then outside that, and this is something that, again, in recent years, I've been building more and more into my work with students, my work with this thinking, in all kinds of issues and strategies, is the societal values, ideologies, laws, in particular for the institution, funding structures, right? So these set out around our institutions and how they work. And so again, it's such a simple model, right? It's so simple to use this set of concentric circles. You'll see it as a series of stair steps. You'll see it in all kinds of ways, kind of eggs coming out, more ovals, right? You'll see it all kinds of ways. And this is the way that works well for me to consider this as a theoretical model that might help underpin and help work with our understanding of what happens to us, and what our institutions perpetuate when it comes to mopping. The other lens that I really, really honor, and again, it's embarrassing to note for myself how new some of this thinking is for me, even the public health parts, right? Even thinking how to analyze something, how to talk about it with students a little bit more strongly, a little bit more clearly, all of that, right? How to translate what I know and believe from my field into training those who want to be in my field, right? How I do that. So it's seriously embarrassing to realize that I only came to the term flourishing and only found it in my American Public Health Association Code of Ethics. I don't know, 5-6 years ago, when I taught my first ethics class in our program. And the term that stuck out to me and that I saw as just critical, if you set aside everything else in this code of ethics, there is a value, a professional value, and in the code of ethics, they outline these structures of values that underpin our ethics, and there's a value of flourishing and human flourishing. And so I have started, when I have the mental space, to look at everything through the lens of human flourishing. And so, you can read this on your own, but I just call out to you, flourishing means this, flourishing happens when, and then this is not flourishing. So the opposite of human flourishing, right? And to me, it's like ding, ding, ding. Right, when we mob each other, when we allow people to be mobbed, when we experience mobbing, we are not flourishing, and we are not helping flourishing. So it is completely antithetical to my understanding of how my field should work to support humans. Uh, and thus it's now, it's present, right? We need to deal with this, and we need to deal with it in some ways that not that haven't been tried before, but as we all do, we come to the ways to look at things around this. And I've started coming to a way of looking at it that not only sets it within our social ecology, but demands that we pay attention to flourishing and what mobbing does um, to the idea of flourishing or to its reality. And so as I thought, well, we just have to develop expertise, right? It's hard. We don't want to develop expertise in something that is harmful. I don't want to learn how to, make kids less safe. I don't want to learn to help old people fall more often, right? And I want to learn how to stop those things, how to prevent those things, right? And that means developing expertise in the variables and what is happening. And I'm guessing that I have very little time left, and that's totally fine, because so moving quickly here. For myself, I want my working life to be better, right? Um, and shorthanding sunshine and rainbows, right? I want something good in academia, and I love that it was brought into the room that academia is, on the surface, it looks good, it looks fun. It looks like we get to take out our brains and play with them and do that in service to others and to training students. And then it's got all these harmful layers underneath that only we know about, right? So I want something better for myself. So my goal in submitting for this conference was to join a community of thinkers around mobbing. And I'm assuming that, again, hearing the welcomes, reading the program, knowing that there's this opportunity to engage as a community of researchers and start some new directions maybe in this, I'm assuming that that's what most people want as well. And so my framing is that we have to claim and understand what happens in mobbing and what happens in our institutions that makes it more or less likely. And then we have to start not just telling stories. I think that's kind of a facile way to talking about issues. But we have to actually be ready to place what happens in academia around mobbing. We have to be ready to place that into our own personal professional biographies or autobiographies. And we have to be ready to tell our institutions and help our institutions and challenge our institutions to decide to own the issue for themselves and to work on it for ourselves as collective groupings in institutions, right? Um, and so I look to always strengthen what I discuss, and it's not just about again stories. It's about that kind of backing up and looking, how do we get there? How do we get seen as folks who not only have stories to tell, and not only have ways of discussing quantitatively and doing surveying and all the kinds of stuff that brings us the ability to be seen as rigorous, right? What else do we do? And so I love starting with this kind of question. And again, you can read them yourself. I won't do that with us. But so that's what I have. And if you get a chance, I would love you to take a look at my virtual talk that I gave to a faculty group, and just recognize that I'm here. I would love to be engaged in next steps around this kind of direction in research around mobbing. So thank you.